You know that feeling when you're searching for the perfect English word, but it's just, out of reach? Well, in this explainer, we're going to fix that. We're about to explore 20 incredibly useful words and phrases that are going to make your communication sharper, more precise, and just a whole lot more confident. So, ready to jump in?
Okay, so we've broken this down into 4 simple parts. First, we'll start with words to describe our inner world, people and their feelings. Then we'll get into the language of challenges and problems. After that, we'll move on to words for actions and rules. And we'll finish up by exploring the vocabulary of skills and progress. It's a really logical path, from who we are to how we grow.
All right, let's dive right into our first section, describing people and feelings. I mean, think about it. The words we use to talk about ourselves and other people are pretty much the foundation of all communication, right? They let us talk about personality, character, and all those little shades of our emotions with so much more accuracy. Let's kick things off with a great contrast. On one hand, we have peaceful. It's an adjective, and it just means calm and quiet. It's related to the noun peace. You could talk about a peaceful place, or maybe having a peaceful mind. A classic example is having a peaceful afternoon. And on the flip side, we have its total opposite, chaotic. This describes complete confusion and disorder, and it comes from the noun chaos. You might say, the airport was absolutely chaotic before the holiday. Okay, next up, we've got 2 words that are all about character. First, coward. This is a noun, and it's for a person who isn't brave when things get dangerous. Now, you have to be careful with this one. It has a really strong negative feel to it. It's basically an insult. For example, only a coward would run away from their responsibilities. But then we have the positive opposite, the adjective courageous. This describes someone who does show bravery. It's related to the noun courage. A perfect example would be, it was courageous of him to admit his mistake. Now for 3 really powerful adjectives that describe how people react to things. First up is indifferent. This is when you just don't have any particular interest or feeling about something. A key thing to remember is the preposition. You are indifferent to something, like he was surprisingly indifferent to the criticism. Next, obedient. This one's all about following the rules. It just means you're willing to do what you're told. The noun is obedience. You might say, our dog is very obedient. And finally, indignant. Now, this isn't just regular anger. It's that specific kind of anger you feel when you think something is just deeply unfair. You might be indignant at an injustice. For instance, she wrote an indignant letter to the editor about the new policy. And that brings us right to our second section. Life isn't always perfect, right? So having the right words to talk about problems, challenges, and all those little imperfections is so important for being clear and honest. It really helps us nail down exactly what's gone wrong. So this slide really shows 2 sides of the same coin. A disadvantage is basically a negative thing that makes something harder. A really common word you'll hear that means the same thing is drawback. We often talk about the pros and cons of something. Well, the cons are the disadvantages. For example, you could say a major disadvantage of living here is the traffic. The opposite, of course, is an advantage. That's the good stuff that puts you in a better position. Like his height gives him a big advantage in basketball. Oh, this is a super helpful one because these 3 words, they get mixed up all the time. They all start with miss, but they're slightly different. Miscommunication is about the sending part. The message just wasn't clear. Misunderstanding is about the receiving part. The listener didn't get it right. And misinterpretation is about the meaning. You heard the words correctly, but you came to the wrong conclusion about what they meant. So you can see how a miscommunication could easily lead to a misunderstanding. The key is figuring out where things went wrong. Let's look at 3 more ways to describe flaws. First, blurry. This is an adjective that just means something isn't clear or in focus, like a blurry photo. You can think of it in the same family as words like foggy or hazy. Next, a dent. A dent is a little hollow in a surface, usually because something hit it. Think of a dent in a car door. And finally, we have a great informal phrase, to be sick, stuck, or caught in a situation. You'd use this to describe being in a tough spot you can't get out of easily. For example, I'm completely stuck on this math problem. Okay, so being able to talk about problems naturally leads us to our third section, words for actions, rules, and results. These are the words that help us describe what's happening in the world, what we're doing about it, and what happens because of it. Now this is interesting. We've got a whole group of verbs here that basically mean to stop something, but they're not all the same. It's all about power and formality. Right at the top, you have forbid and prohibit. These are very strong, very formal, often used in laws or official rules, like the rules prohibit smoking inside the building. Then you have restrict, which means to put a limit on something, and ban, which is to officially stop it completely. The government plans to ban the sale of the product. And finally, disallow. This is often used in sports or contests, and it means something isn't valid. The referee disallowed the goal. Here's a fun one. The word grounded has two totally different common meanings, and it all just depends on the context. First, in the world of airplanes, if a pilot or an aircraft is grounded, it means they're not allowed to fly. It's usually for safety. You might hear on the news, all flights have been grounded because of the blizzard. But the second, much more informal meaning, is a punishment for kids where they're not allowed to go out and have fun. For example, my parents grounded me for a week for coming home late.
Let's look at 3 more action words. First, a pair that are kind of related, wrap and fold. To wrap something means to cover it up, like you'd wrap a present. To fold something is to bend it over on itself, like folding a piece of paper. Next up, expedite. This is a great, more formal verb that just means to speed up a process. You could say, we paid an extra fee to expedite the delivery. And finally, smash. This is a really strong verb. It means to break something violently into a lot of pieces. You can almost hear the sound of a glass smashing on the floor.
And now, we're on to our final section, and this one is all about growth. We've talked about actions and results, so let's look at the words we use to describe our skills, what we know, and that whole journey of getting better at something. This is a really fundamental pair of words. If someone is literate, it means they're able to read and write. The really important noun here is literacy, which is the skill itself. And we're even starting to use it for other things, like computer literacy or financial literacy. You might say, the program aims to improve adult literacy rates. And the direct opposite, of course, is illiterate, someone who is unable to read or write. I love this slide because it shows a clear path of getting better at something, kind of like climbing a ladder. At the basic level, your skill might be adequate. That just means it's good enough, it's acceptable. His knowledge of the software was adequate for the job. But as you get better, you gain proficiency. This means you have a high degree of skill. She has proficiency in 3 languages. And right at the very top is mastery. This is when you have complete expert-level knowledge. It takes years to achieve mastery of a musical instrument. Let's wrap up with 2 final, very important words. First, repetitive. This adjective describes something that happens over and over again, and it often has a slightly boring feel to it. The noun is repetition. You could say, he found the work on the factory line to be very repetitive. Now for something completely different, remission. This word has 2 very specific meanings. In a legal or financial context, it's when a debt is canceled. But importantly, in a medical context, it means a period of time when a serious illness gets better and the symptoms go away or decrease. For example, it was a huge relief to hear that his illness was in remission. And there we have it, 20 powerful words and phrases to really boost your English. We've gone from feelings and character, through problems and actions, and all the way to skills and progress. But listen, here's the most important thing. Knowing these words is only half the battle. The real key to making them yours is to actually use them. So I'll just leave you with this question. Which one of these new words are you going to try out this week?